Thank you for joining me for today's Infinite Banking Masterclass. I'm Ron Sneller, registered financial consultant, and I'm thrilled that you decided to join me here today. I'm thrilled that you're wanting to learn strategies on how to take back control of your money from the banks, from Wall Street, and from government restriction. You know, infinite banking has been called the most efficient and effective way of using your money to build your net worth, to live a prosperous life, and to pass your wealth on to your children. You see, when you practice infinite banking, you are cutting out all of the banks, the brokers, and the other lenders. You're cutting them out of the equation in order to finance your own daily living, your own retirement, your own business opportunities, and other lucrative investments such as real estate. You see, you take over and you are essentially running your own business, the business of your life. So we need to talk about why. Why would we use this strategy? What problems are we trying to solve? And what we're doing is we're trying to solve the big problem that you see on your screen right now. We're trying to solve the problem of the financial matrix. I heard an author named Orrin Woodward coin this phrase. This is actually the cover of his book. He named these entities the financial matrix. You see, for the last 80 years, our financial system has been driven and controlled by Wall Street, by the big banks, and by their cronies within the government. Now, look, we already know that there are a few problems and things happening right now that could potentially have very negative consequences for every single American if they're not adequately prepared. Think about what's going on with inflation and the skyrocketing cost of goods and services, even everyday things like food and gas prices. Think about what's going on with the fractional reserve banking system and how they're causing this problem, and the Federal Reserve's manipulation of currency. Or look at China's economic growth and their growing influence. Or how about the simple fact that the US government is running $1 trillion deficits every year. And just recently, we hit a wonderful milestone. As a country, we are now $30 trillion in debt. Are these really the kind of people that you want having control and influence over your money? So what if there was a way to protect your capital and grow it at the same time? This is the secret strategy that the wealthiest families in America have used for generations to protect and grow their wealth. I'm talking about the ultra wealthy, families like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. They've used this strategy to create their empires. Businessmen like Walt Disney, J.C. Penney, and Ray Kroc have all utilized this strategy to create their empires. But you don't need their kind of wealth to benefit from this strategy. What we want to do is talk about maximizing your wealth. Now, the first step to maximizing your future potential is to maximize your income and your savings now. But the first step in maximizing your savings is by minimizing, or more importantly, eliminating what I like to call wealth transfers. You see, almost every one of us on a daily basis transfers a portion of our potential wealth away from our personal economy and out of our control forever. Now, some of these transfers we know about, but with others, we have no idea that they're happening. Now, the biggest wealth transfer that most of us know about and we're well aware of and that we hate is through confiscation by the Internal Revenue Service. In other words, what they like to say, paying our fair share of taxes. Now, another wealth transfer is from interest charges on debt or on bad spending or consumeristic spending. A recent survey by GoBankingRates.com compiled a blueprint of what a typical American's spending, debt, and savings accounts look like. Now, with this kind of debt, how in the hell can anyone in this country get ahead, much less have aspirations for financial freedom? In this financial matrix that we're talking about, they've conditioned us that those things that you see on your screen, they've conditioned us that none of it matters. This is all normal to most people. It's just conventional wisdom. Just a little bit of taxes paid over here. Just a little bit of fees paid to Wall Street over here. Just a little bit of interest paid to the banks over there. We get accustomed to this and we get used to it. And we don't even realize how much money is just slipping through our fingers. This is the hidden wealth transfer that the financial matrix has conditioned us to accept as normal. And they would do anything to get you to not learn about these hidden wealth transfers because they don't want you to address them. because that's how they make their money. You see, through leverage, the infinite banking concept essentially takes $1 and turns it into $2. Well, how is that possible? Well, there are really 3 different ways that you could run your household spending and investing. Now, for the typical American that we introduced you to earlier, they are borrowing to pay for large expenses, for financing their lifestyle or capital for their business. We call these people debtors. They work to spend, and they don't have capital working for them because they can't save. Now, when expenses come up, they borrow the money and they slowly repay the loan using future income. They're always paying interest. The cycle of continued borrowing and repaying continues, but they are always working and struggling just to get back to zero. They have obligated the majority of their future paychecks to someone else. They have become somebody else's asset. Now, the traditional way that maybe our parents and grandparents handled large expenses is that they saved their money. Now, when they have a large expense come up, they simply spend their cash, or they empty their savings to pay for it. Or what I like to say is, quote, they drain their tank. And as savers go through their life, they are continuously going through a cycle of filling their tank, but then draining their tank. Every time they have a big expense, their tank is drained and they return back to zero. You see, in this comparison, they are no better off than the debtor. Why? Because at the end of the day, they still wind up at zero. Each time they drain their tank, they kill their power of compounding and they have to start over. But not only do they transfer their wealth to somebody else, they're also transferring the future compounding potential of that wealth to somebody else as well. You see, Albert Einstein said that the 8th wonder of the world is compounding interest. But he was only half right. The true wonder is uninterrupted compounding interest. If you'll just let that power go to work for you over the long term. But as you see on your screen, most people don't do that. They're constantly interrupting their power of compounding. Think of the lost opportunity cost. I'll show you the math on that here in a bit. But the infinite banking strategy puts an end to this interruption and lets you enjoy true, uninterrupted compound interest. Let's check that out next. And the third way of spending is to become what I like to call a wealth creator. These are people who save as much of their money as possible. But when they need to make a purchase, what they do is they access capital by collateralizing against that growing wealth. You see, the key is to borrow against an appreciating asset, thus never interrupting the power of compound interest. This is the secret. This is the key that the wealthiest families have done in America for generations. Using this strategy, you are never interrupting compound interest. And not only are you recapturing all of the principal and interest of a purchase by paying it back to yourself, what you found a way to do is leverage the incredible power of OPM to do it, other people's money. And you are using other people's money at effectively no cost. Now, how does that work? Well, the idea is simple. You build up equity in an infinite banking account or asset. It earns uninterrupted compound interest. And then when you have a large purchase or you want to make an investment, you simply use the account's value as collateral to secure a loan in order to make that purchase. Now, most people have been conditioned that all forms of debt are bad. So you might hear the word loan, and maybe you cringe because you've been conditioned that as a 4-letter word. So you might be thinking, won't this just make us a debtor? Now, the fact of the matter is that there are good forms of debt, the kind of debt where you can pay interest to turn around and then make more interest. Now, how can that possibly be with infinite banking? Well, it has to do with the difference with the math on compounding interest on your savings versus the interest that you pay on amortizing loans. Let's take a look at the difference. Let's say that you can borrow $50,000 at 6% and pay it back over the course of 25 years. Now, that's $46,645 in interest. But with each passing year, the principal is reduced as you make your payments. And so each subsequent year, the interest calculation is reduced as well. If we reverse the scenario, say that you had $50,000 in a vehicle earning 6% interest over 25 years, you earn $164,593. because the principal increases each year due to the interest earned. Each subsequent year, that interest increases because it's calculated on an ever-growing amount of principal as well. So looking at the summary, $164,000 of interest earned versus $46,000 of interest paid, that's a net gain of $118,000. Plus, you still have the original $50,000 of principal because you never transferred that money out of your personal economy. So the final balance is over $214,000. So what if you saved up that money in your bank account and just spent it? Well, not only would you be out the $50,000 of principal right now, but plus the opportunity to earn over $164,000 of interest. That is why being just a saver and spending cash for purchases, that's not the best way to build long-term wealth, no matter what the financial talking heads like Dave Ramsey have to say. So you may be thinking, this sounds pretty good, but what's the cost to do this? Now, the secret to making these life insurance policies work for infinite banking is to properly structure the contract, to stuff as much cash into the contract as possible while minimizing the expenses and charges that typically come with insurance. Now, over the lifetime of the contract, those fees and those charges and expenses are generally going to total about 1% of the total cash value that you've accumulated. Now, remember, the reason that we're using life insurance for infinite banking, it really doesn't have to do with the life insurance benefit at all. It has to do with two main things. Number one, the flexibility and guaranteed access to this line of credit that we're building through the cash value. And then number two, how the tax code treats life insurance contracts. CPA and IRA expert Ed Slott, during his retirement presentation, he says that life insurance is the single greatest benefit in the entire United States tax code. So now that we understand the basic concept, the cost, the benefits, let's bring it all together because this is where it gets really good. Let's take a look at the true cost of paying cash for things, because this is the Dave Ramsey way. But Dave Ramsey will never share this little concept called opportunity cost that's associated with the Dave Ramsey way. In this example, we're going to show somebody who's saving $1,000 a month or $12,000 a year. And then let's say at the end of 6 years, they have accumulated $83,704. And what they want to do is they want to spend that money. So they have to drain their tank and then start saving that $1,000 a month all over again, only to drain the tank again when they want to make another purchase and then keep repeating the cycle. The red chart shows what happens to your wealth when you are consistently interrupting the power of compounding. The green chart shows what happens to that same amount of money if you'll simply let it enjoy compound interest. Instead of withdrawing money from the account, you borrow against it instead and let your account values continue to grow. If you were to add that $1,000 a month to your cash reserves and let it enjoy uninterrupted compound interest, at the end of 30 years, if it was growing at 6%, you would have grown it to over $1 million, tax-free. But by draining your tank every 6 years and interrupting the compounding power of the wealth that you're saving, the Dave Ramsey way turns out to be a $1 million mistake. Now, look, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is about long-term savings, long-term wealth building. As you can see on this chart, in the short term, it doesn't make that much of a difference. But over the course of 20 or 30 years, and instinctively, we know how compound interest works. We know that it's a long-term play. So now you're sold on the power of infinite banking. You've decided that you want to set up an account. Now, once you've funded your account and you want to collateralize it, what can you do with the money? Well, that's where it gets really interesting. Again, you are your own bank. You're in control. And as you saw on this chart, you can use that money to finance cars, college, weddings, boats, etc. The money that the typical person is transferring out of their personal economy, transferring the future compounding potential of wealth. Instead of making that mistake, you have recaptured all of the principal and all of the interest of those purchases and put it back to work for you. And you've eliminated the interest that you paid to the banks on your purchases because you've learned how to create loan arbitrage. Now, do I recommend that you borrow against your policy and go to Vegas? No, absolutely not. But another thing that you can do in addition to financing lifestyle purchases is you can deploy this capital into acquiring other productive assets like real estate, expanding or buying a business, or even simply just buying more into the stock market after a big market correction. This concept is how many wealthy people have gotten wealthy. They protect and safely grow their capital, keep control and access to it, and then they make an absolute killing during the downturns. During those recessions and crashes, when everybody else is panicking and selling off assets in a fire sale, guess what? The wealthy swoop in with their cash and they buy these assets for cheap. And then again, over time, those assets rise in value and they just end up making a killing. In fact, Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he has said multiple times that the financial crash was the best time of their life because they were able to exponentially increase their wealth. But you're only able to do it if you have access to capital. Now, maybe we're not in the same position as Robert Kiyosaki, but can't we use the same wealth concepts to simply improve upon our present situation? I mean, imagine being in a position where you could be sitting in the dark of your basement, greedily rubbing your hands together, just hoping that a crash would happen. Because you know that not only would you not be hurt by it, but you'd actually be in a position to take advantage of it. Now, when would you want to get started on something like this? Before the next downturn or after? So wrapping this class up, you guys, I really appreciate you hanging in there. You see, we have the ability, along with the preferred life insurance partner companies, to create for our clients their own personal economy, built upon a secure financial foundation and built upon sound economic principles. Again, this isn't a get-rich-quick scheme or a gimmick. It's about long-term wealth building. But we're not talking about locking up your money and letting it sit stagnant for 30 or 40 years like the typical retirement plan. And we're not talking about turning it over to someone else or investing in somebody else's business like you do when you invest in the stock market. We're talking about developing a strategy that's going to put you back in the driver's seat by giving you control, liquidity, and utilization of your money while at the same time still building your equity. You see, the way that we strategically manage these policies, moving your money in and out and creating velocity, utilizing the equity to acquire productive assets. You see, the velocity of money, it gives you all the advantage. We're essentially able to create more with the same dollar, but at the same time, we're never interrupting the power of compounding on your savings. Point number 4, there is no magic to creating wealth. Wealth is created through disciplined savings, uninterrupted compound interest, and the ease of leverage in the acquisition of productive assets. The infinite banking concept, along with the use of dividend-paying cash value life insurance, will give you the best opportunity to, number 1, compound your savings, number 2, give you guaranteed principal protection, and number 3, give you guaranteed access to your capital to either finance personal purchases or to take advantage of investment opportunities when those opportunities present themselves. It's all about maximizing your wealth creation. With the infinite banking concept, we're able to be flexible. We're able to utilize the tax-free guidelines within the Internal Revenue Code, and we're able to grow our wealth off the radar screen of the IRS for income tax purposes. We're able to create a tax-free retirement, and of course, our most important promise is to secure the next generation. Now, as good as I'm making this sound, I'm not saying that you should put every cent that you have into this program. Although I have a couple of clients who are risk averse, and they do that, and they're happy to do so. But what I am saying is that infinite banking might be the first brick that you lay as you're building your financial foundation. A foundation that will allow you to create your own personal economy, hold on to more of your wealth, and optimize the efficiency of all your other assets in your investment portfolio. I have never had more fun in my entire career than I am right now by educating people on infinite banking and how they can utilize it to escape the financial matrix and to take back control of their money from the banking system, from the IRS, and from their complete dependence on Wall Street. You see, we're able to position you and your personal economy where you can enjoy most of your money today while still saving it for tomorrow. So now you can see that infinite banking really is the best way to recapture and control the wealth that is flowing through your personal economy and still have access and control over those assets. Let's put you back in the driver's seat of your financial future. If you want to learn more, and if you're serious about implementing this strategy, all you have to do is when this video is done, click the link below. There's a link to my calendar where you're able to schedule a complimentary consultation with no obligation. I look forward to speaking with you, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in for the class. All righty.